The silence was deafening. Years of loyalty, of sacrifice, reduced to whispers and averted gazes. They raised their glasses, the crystal catching the light, celebrating a future I wasn't meant to be a part of. They thought I wouldn't notice the subtle shifts, the carefully worded invitations that never arrived. They were wrong. Because in that moment, watching them toast to my absence, I knew that the game had just begun. If you've ever felt betrayed by your own family, subscribe now and share your story. My sister, Emily, always had a flair for the dramatic. Our childhood was a constant performance, with Emily as the star and me as the ever-reliable supporting cast. I didn't mind. I loved her, and her happiness was in many ways my own. I was the practical one, the steady hand, the one who always made sure the bills were paid and the house was in order. Emily, on the other hand, was a whirlwind of creativity and charm. She flitted from one passion to another, leaving a trail of glitter and half-finished projects in her wake. When she met James, a wealthy and ambitious lawyer, everyone said they were a perfect match. He was captivated by her free spirit, and she was drawn to his stability and success. I was genuinely happy for her, and I threw myself into helping with the wedding preparations. After all, that's what sisters do. My name is Sarah, and I always believed in family. The first sign that something was amiss came subtly. The seating chart, a sprawling document that seemed to dictate the social hierarchy of our entire extended family, was a constant source of stress. Emily would spend hours rearranging names, agonizing over which distant cousin deserved a spot closer to the head table. But during one particular afternoon, I overheard a hushed conversation between Emily and our mother. "She just doesn't fit, Mom," Emily whispered, her voice laced with a strange mix of frustration and guilt. "It's my special day, and I want to be surrounded by people who understand my vision." My mother's reply was even more chilling. "We'll handle it, dear. Don't worry." I tried to dismiss it as wedding stress, but a knot of unease began to tighten in my stomach. As the weeks progressed, I noticed other small but significant changes. My offers to help were met with polite but firm refusals. Invitations to pre-wedding events seemed to get lost in the mail. I felt like I was slowly being erased from their lives. Then came the official wedding invitations, pristine white envelopes addressed to every member of our family, except me. I found out through a distant relative who innocently asked if I was excited for the big day. The air in my lungs felt thin, and the world tilted on its axis. I confronted Emily, my voice trembling with a mixture of hurt and disbelief. "Why wasn't I invited?" I asked, the question hanging heavy in the air between us. She avoided my gaze, shuffling her feet and picking at a loose thread on her dress. "It's complicated, Sarah," she finally mumbled. "James's family, they have certain expectations. They want a certain image." The words stung like a slap. So I wasn't good enough? My presence would somehow tarnish their perfect fairy tale wedding? My own sister, the person I had always supported and loved unconditionally, was choosing social climbing over family. The weeks that followed were a blur of pain and confusion. I tried to talk to my parents, but they were evasive, offering platitudes about doing what's best for Emily and not wanting to cause any drama. It became clear that they were complicit in this exclusion, willing to sacrifice my feelings for the sake of their daughter's social standing. I felt like an outsider in my own family, a ghost haunting the edges of their lives. The day of the wedding arrived, a beautiful, sunny Saturday that felt like a cruel mockery of my inner turmoil. I stayed home, the silence of my apartment amplifying the ache in my chest. I scrolled through social media, watching as friends and family posted photos of the lavish ceremony and the joyful reception. I saw Emily, radiant in her white dress, laughing and dancing with James. I saw my parents, beaming with pride, basking in the glow of their daughter's happiness. But I didn't see myself. I was invisible, erased from their narrative, deemed unworthy of their celebration. The person I trusted most was one of them. The silence in my apartment became a suffocating presence, a constant reminder of the gaping hole in my life. Sleep offered no escape. Nightmares plagued me, replaying the wedding scene on an endless loop, each time with a new, more agonizing twist.
I'd wake up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding, gasping for air as if I were drowning. During the day, I tried to maintain a facade of normalcy, going to work, running errands, and meeting friends for coffee. But beneath the surface, I was a broken shell, each interaction a painful reminder of the family I had lost. The casual inquiries about the wedding, the well-meaning congratulations directed at my sister, felt like knives twisting in my gut. I forced myself to smile, to nod, to offer generic responses, all the while fighting back the tears that threatened to spill over. I started avoiding family gatherings, fabricating excuses to escape the suffocating atmosphere of forced cheerfulness and unspoken judgment.
Thanksgiving, Christmas, birthdays, each holiday became a minefield of awkward silences and thinly veiled barbs. My parents would call, their voices strained, attempting to bridge the chasm that had grown between us. They would offer hollow apologies, justifications for their actions, always circling back to Emily's happiness as the ultimate justification. I tried to explain the depth of my pain, the feeling of being cast aside, but my words seemed to fall on deaf ears. They couldn't understand, or perhaps they simply didn't want to. Driven by a desperate need to salvage what was left of my family, I attempted to mend fences with Emily. I sent her a heartfelt letter, pouring out my emotions, expressing my hurt and confusion, and pleading for an explanation. I emphasized my love for her, my unwavering support throughout her life, and my willingness to forgive if she could simply acknowledge the pain she had caused. I waited for a response, my hope flickering like a fragile flame. Days turned into weeks, and still nothing. Finally, I received a short, impersonal email. She thanked me for my letter, vaguely apologized for any hurt feelings, and reiterated the need to respect her choices. The email ended with a curt, best wishes, as if I were nothing more than a distant acquaintance. It was the final blow. Any remaining hope I had harbored for reconciliation vanished, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. They had made their choice. They had severed the ties that bound us. And I, in turn, would no longer allow them to dictate my life. The injustice of it all burned within me, a slow, simmering rage that began to consume my thoughts. Sleepless nights were now filled with calculations. The weight of their betrayal began to transform into a plan. If they believed that blood was thicker than water, they were about to learn the true meaning of the phrase, eye for an eye. The rejection email felt like a physical blow. The air left my lungs, and a cold numbness spread through my limbs. It wasn't just the words themselves, but the tone, the dismissive, almost clinical detachment. It was as if I were a problem to be managed, an inconvenience to be brushed aside. I reread the email countless times, searching for a hidden meaning, a glimmer of hope, but found only emptiness. The reality of my situation crashed down on me, heavy and suffocating. I was alone, truly alone. My family, the people who were supposed to love and support me unconditionally, had rejected me. They had chosen status and appearances over blood and loyalty. The pain was unbearable, a gaping wound that seemed to fester with each passing day. I retreated into myself, isolating myself from the outside world. I called in sick to work, canceled plans with friends, and spent my days huddled in my apartment, lost in a haze of grief and self-pity. The silence was no longer just a reminder of their absence, but a reflection of my own internal void. I stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped caring. The world outside my window continued to spin, but I was frozen in place, trapped in a cycle of despair. The apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison. Every object, every photograph, every memory served as a painful reminder of what I had lost. I wandered through the rooms like a ghost, touching familiar objects, reliving moments of joy and laughter, each memory now tainted by the bitter taste of betrayal. The weight of my sadness was a heavy shroud. One night, I found myself standing on my balcony, the city lights twinkling below like a scattered constellation. A cool breeze brushed against my face, and for a moment, I felt a sense of clarity, a fleeting glimpse of perspective. The world was vast and indifferent, and my problems, however significant they seemed, were ultimately insignificant in the grand scheme of things. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and considered simply letting go. The thought was tempting, a release from the pain, a surrender to the darkness. But then, a flicker of defiance ignited within me, a spark of anger, a refusal to be defeated. They wanted me gone. They wanted to erase me from their lives. And for a moment, I considered giving them exactly what they wanted, to simply fade away. But the thought of them winning, of them celebrating my defeat, was unbearable. They didn't deserve that satisfaction. I opened my eyes, my gaze hardening with resolve. No, I wouldn't let them win. I wouldn't let them break me. I wouldn't let them define my life. I would survive. I would overcome. And I would make them regret the day they ever crossed me. A cold smile crept across my lips. The victim was gone. The planner had arrived.
To the outside world, I was still the same Sarah, the quiet, unassuming sister. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. Their biggest weakness? They thought they were untouchable. I smiled. I played their game. I showed up at family dinners, armed with polite conversation and a carefully constructed mask of indifference. I congratulated Emily on her successes, admired her new house, and listened patiently as she recounted stories of her charmed life. All the while, I was recording. Not with a literal device, but with my mind, my memory, capturing every nuance, every detail, every inconsistency. Their arrogance was their downfall. They assumed that because I was silent, I was oblivious. They didn't realize that every word, every gesture, every fleeting expression was being meticulously cataloged, analyzed, and weaponized. I started small, focusing on James's professional life. He was a shark in the legal world, known for his aggressive tactics and his win-at-all-costs mentality. I discovered that he had a history of bending the rules, of pushing the boundaries of ethical behavior. There were whispers of shady deals, of conflicts of interest, of clients who had been unfairly taken advantage of. I began digging deeper, searching for concrete evidence to substantiate these rumors. I spent countless hours poring over court documents, financial records, and online databases. I contacted former clients, disgruntled employees, anyone who might have information about James's questionable practices. Most were reluctant to talk, afraid of his power and his reputation. But slowly, painstakingly, I began to piece together a disturbing picture. One evening, while babysitting their new smart home system, a Christmas gift I had ostensibly given to make their lives easier, I bypassed their security protocols. It was laughably easy. James, for all his legal prowess, was a digital simpleton. I installed a packet sniffer on their network. Soon I had a complete record of their communications, emails, text messages, even their supposedly encrypted messaging apps. It was a goldmine. I discovered that James was involved in a complex scheme to defraud a group of investors out of millions of dollars. He was using offshore accounts and shell corporations to conceal his involvement, but the digital breadcrumbs were there, scattered throughout his emails and financial records. The investors were mostly elderly people, retirees who had entrusted their life savings to James's firm. The thought of these vulnerable people being exploited by my brother-in-law filled me with a cold fury. I also found conversations between Emily and James discussing their disdain for my parents and their plans to essentially cut them off once they had secured their inheritance. The level of calculated cruelty was breathtaking. I knew I had enough, more than enough. I now had a weapon, a truth bomb that could obliterate their carefully constructed world. The only question was how to detonate it. I needed to ensure that my actions were untraceable, that I could expose their crimes without implicating myself. I consulted with a friend who worked in digital forensics, explaining my situation in vague terms, careful not to reveal too much. She advised me on how to anonymize my online activity, how to use VPNs and proxy servers to mask my IP address, and how to securely leak the information to the appropriate authorities. I created an anonymous email account using a burner phone and a public Wi-Fi hotspot. I carefully compiled all the evidence I had gathered, organizing it into a comprehensive package that would be easy for investigators to understand. I then sent the package to the State Bar Association, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and a local investigative journalist known for his hard-hitting exposés. In the email, I outlined James's alleged crimes, providing specific details and supporting documentation. I also included copies of the incriminating emails and text messages I had obtained from their smart home system. I ended the email with a simple statement: the truth deserves to be exposed. The waiting was agonizing.
I knew that it would take time for the authorities to investigate the allegations, but I was impatient for justice. I monitored the news closely, searching for any sign that my efforts had paid off. I continued to play the role of the dutiful sister and daughter, attending family events and engaging in polite conversation. But beneath my calm exterior, I was a coiled spring, ready to unleash my fury at any moment. There were close calls. Once, James made a passing comment about tightening up our security after a supposed hacking incident at his firm. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. Had he somehow discovered my involvement? Was he onto me? I played it cool, feigning ignorance and deflecting his questions. But the incident left me shaken, a stark reminder of the risks I was taking. Another time, my mother called, her voice filled with concern. She had heard rumors about James's legal troubles and wanted to know if I knew anything about it. I denied everything, assuring her that it was just gossip. But I could hear the doubt in her voice. The pressure was mounting. I knew that I had to act soon, before my carefully laid plans unraveled. The exact day they tried to end me, I exposed the truth.
The day the news broke, I was at Emily's house. The irony wasn't lost on me. We were celebrating her promotion, a sham orchestrated by James to funnel more money through his firm. Champagne flutes clinked, forced laughter echoed, and I watched them, these architects of my personal hell, basking in their fraudulent success. My phone vibrated in my purse, an unknown number. I excused myself, stepping onto the manicured patio, the scent of roses a cruel mockery of the thorns it so gleefully plunged into my back. It was the journalist, his voice a low, gravelly rumble, cut through the facade. "Sarah, we're running the story tonight. James's firm is about to be turned inside out." He detailed the evidence, the corroboration he'd found, the impending investigations. He even mentioned the defrauded retirees, their stories of broken promises and shattered dreams. A wave of nausea washed over me, but beneath it, a dark satisfaction bloomed. It was happening. Their carefully constructed world was about to crumble. I thanked him, my voice barely a whisper, and ended the call. Turning back towards the house, I saw Emily watching me through the window. Her face was unreadable, a mask of suspicion and barely concealed fury. I plastered on a smile, a sickeningly sweet expression that I knew would infuriate her even more. "Everything all right, Sarah?" she called out as I stepped back inside. "Just work," I said lightly, waving my hand dismissively. "You know how it is." The air in the room felt thick, charged with unspoken tension. James raised an eyebrow, his eyes narrowed, assessing me with a predatory gaze. I met his stare head-on, refusing to flinch. The party continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. The laughter sounded strained, the conversation stilted. I could feel their eyes on me, questioning, probing, trying to decipher my reaction. I played the part of the oblivious sister to perfection, sipping my champagne, making small talk, and feigning interest in their vapid conversations. But inside, my heart was pounding, counting down the minutes until the story broke. The trap was set. The bait had been taken. Now, all that was left was to watch it spring. As the evening wore on, the tension became unbearable. Emily kept shooting me furtive glances, her face a mask of barely concealed anxiety. James, on the other hand, seemed to be trying too hard to act normal, his forced joviality a clear indication that something was amiss. He kept checking his phone, pacing nervously, and making excuses to step outside for important business calls. I knew he was sensing the shift, the impending storm. He just didn't know where it was coming from. Finally, the moment arrived. A breaking news alert flashed across my phone screen. I excused myself again, this time heading to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. The headline screamed, "Local law firm accused of multi-million-dollar fraud scheme."
Below it, a photo of James, his face plastered across the screen like a wanted poster. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a potent mix of fear and exhilaration. This was it, the point of no return. I opened the article, devouring every word, savoring the details of their impending downfall. The journalist had done his job well. The evidence was presented clearly and concisely, leaving no room for doubt. The article included excerpts from the leaked emails, quotes from the defrauded investors, and a detailed account of James's shady financial dealings. It was a comprehensive takedown, a meticulously crafted exposé that would leave their reputations in tatters. I took a deep breath, composing myself, and unlocked the bathroom door. The scene that greeted me was almost comical. James was standing in the living room, his face ashen, his eyes wide with panic. Emily was beside him, her hand clamped over her mouth, her body trembling. The other guests were huddled together, whispering amongst themselves, their faces a mixture of shock and morbid curiosity. All eyes turned to me as I entered the room. The silence was deafening. "What's going on?" I asked, feigning innocence. James turned towards me, his gaze desperate. "Sarah, did you know about this?" he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. I met his gaze, my expression blank. "Know about what, James?" He lunged towards me, grabbing my arm, his grip tight. "Don't play dumb with me. This is all your fault, isn't it?" Emily gasped, pulling him back. "James, stop. You're scaring her." He ignored her, his eyes fixed on me, burning with rage. "You did this, didn't you? You've been plotting against us all along." My smile widened, a slow, predatory curve of my lips. "Maybe I have," I said softly, my voice dripping with venom. "Maybe you finally underestimated me." I paused, letting the words sink in. After all, I learned from the best. The color drained from his face. He knew. He finally knew. And in that moment, I saw a flicker of fear in his eyes, a primal terror that sent a shiver of satisfaction down my spine. Before he could speak, the front door burst open. Two men in dark suits strode into the room, their faces grim. James Thompson, one of them asked, his voice authoritative. James swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously. "Yes?" The men flashed their badges. "You're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud." James's face crumpled. He looked at Emily, then at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of disbelief and despair. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. The officers cuffed his hands behind his back and led him out of the house. Emily stood there, frozen, her face a mask of shock and horror. The other guests began to disperse, their faces averted, muttering excuses as they fled the scene. I watched them go, my heart pounding in my chest. It was over. They were finished.
As James was led away, he turned back to me one last time, his eyes filled with hatred. "You haven't won, Sarah," he snarled. "This isn't over." I just smiled. "Oh, I think it is, James," I said sweetly. "It's just beginning." The aftermath was swift and brutal. James's arrest sent shockwaves through the legal community. His firm, once a beacon of success and prestige, crumbled overnight. Clients fled, partners jumped ship, and the once gleaming office tower became a tomb of shattered reputations. The Securities and Exchange Commission launched a full-scale investigation, uncovering a web of deceit and corruption that extended far beyond the initial allegations. James's offshore accounts were frozen, his assets seized, and his carefully constructed empire reduced to ashes. Emily, once the picture of polished perfection, was now a pariah. Her friends deserted her, her social circle evaporated, and her name became synonymous with scandal. The new house, once a symbol of their success, was now a constant reminder of their downfall, a gilded cage of shame and regret. My parents were devastated, not only by James's betrayal, but also by the realization that their daughter had been living a lie for so long. The revelation of Emily's palace plans to cut them off from their inheritance was a particularly cruel blow, leaving them heartbroken and disillusioned. They struggled to reconcile the image of the loving, devoted daughter they thought they knew with the cold, calculating woman who had been plotting against them. The family gatherings ceased, the holiday celebrations were canceled, and the once close-knit family fractured beyond repair.
The trial was a media circus. Every sordid detail of James's crimes was laid bare, dissected, and analyzed for public consumption. The defrauded retirees testified, their voices trembling with anger and pain as they recounted their stories of broken promises and shattered dreams. The evidence was overwhelming, the case airtight. James was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to a lengthy prison term. Emily, though not directly implicated in the fraud scheme, faced intense scrutiny for her role in concealing his activities. Her reputation was irrevocably damaged, her career prospects ruined. She was forced to sell their house, liquidate their assets, and start over from scratch. I didn't attend the trial. I didn't want to see them, to gloat over their misfortune. I had already achieved what I set out to do. I had exposed their crimes, brought them to justice, and reclaimed my life. In the end, they lost everything: their money, their status, their reputations, their family. They were left with nothing but the bitter taste of their own deceit. And me? I walked away, scarred but not broken, wounded but not defeated. I rebuilt my life, brick by brick, forging a new path for myself, one free from their toxic influence. I found peace in solitude, strength in resilience, and hope in the promise of a brighter future. Revenge isn't sweet. It's necessary. It's the act of reclaiming what was stolen, of righting a wrong, of finding justice in a world that often seems devoid of it. It's not about inflicting pain or seeking retribution. It's about healing, about moving on, about finally being free. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more justice.